Welcome to One Brothas Mind, and I am KD Smooth. Today we will question and challenge popular information and views from a B1 perspective, while we expose the real facts you need. We do this to strengthen your logical, critical, and discerning thinking skills. Because in today's world, hard choices are mandatory and they come with consequences. So you need all the information. And at One Brothas Mind, we do this from a B1 Yeshua the Christ followers perspective. Now, if you're not ready, you better get ready with Katie Smooth at One Brothas Mind. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to a new report here with One Brothas Mind. We thank you for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, on tonight's report, we got a story that is the powers that be seems to be trying to hide. They're trying to cover this story up, but One Brothas Mind has gotten a hold of it, and we're going to share it with you because it is definitely need to know information. So before we get started, family, remember to please like, share, and subscribe to One Brothas Mind, because oftentimes B1 channels like One Brothas Mind are the only place that you will be able to get and receive info on various stories, or at the very least, we're maybe the only place that you will receive reports on the stories early or first, if you will. Okay? So, the story that we're covering tonight, family, we're going to chop it up on this one because this is a doozy, is this one. Yes. 40 Orlando hospital nurses walk out due to understaffing that led to an unnoticed patient suicide. Yeah, you heard that right, family. Yeah, they're trying to bury this one, but it's out there in these social media streets. And actually, just reporting this myself, this story here on One Brothas Mind may get taken down, but we're gonna try to provide the information, the truth, the facts as it's been reported. Okay, so the question, family, is here. Like I said, this story is. They're trying to hide this story, but it's being reported or been reported on by this news website as well as the Orlando Sentinel. But I don't have the Orlando Sentinel screenshot here because they're a subscription website and I don't have a subscription to them. But if you do, you can also find this story reported by the Orlando Sentinel. But that's it. No other local Orlando news or so-called mainstream news sources have reported this story. There's a reason for that, family. This is what they do. This is not new. They squash stories or attempt to squash them all the time. When they reveal the dirt under the rug for whether it be government, big business, healthcare systems. I mean, you can just go down the list. Okay? And they all work together. The media, they work with the corporations and the governments, whether it's local or national, to hide stories. Now, as far as the mainstream media is concerned, they're hiding the stories because they know that if they report on these stories that the powers that be don't want reported on, but if they go ahead and do it, then in the future, whether it be the government, corporations, hospitals, or other large entities, in the future, those entities will not give them interviews and reports and information on future stories. So that's one of the reasons why most of your mainstream, you can't find this on mainstream. It's actually was first reported on social media. Okay. And then the Orlando Sentinel finally did a report on it because it's too big a story, but they're hiding it. So we're going to share it with you here tonight, family, here at One Brothas Mind. I'm going to just share with you briefly some excerpts of this story reported that you see on your screen. Okay. I'm going to share some of it with you. And yes. Okay. As you see on your screen, it says Orlando nurses, but it's been reported that there was 40 Orlando nurses that walked out. Okay. This story goes on to report that on Friday, May 27, around 40 nurses walked off the job at Orlando Regional Medical Center in downtown Orlando, Florida. The spontaneous walkout was in protest against inhuman workloads, which led to a tragic suicide by a patient going unnoticed for hours. Okay. Nurses were apparently forced to sign non-disclosure forms and are unable to speak about any of the conditions at the hospital or face retaliation, including the loss of their jobs. As a result, nurses are speaking through a prominent nurse advocates on social media, such as one called Nurse Nander, Nander, who are anonymously sharing reports, photos, and information from the Orlando Regional Medical Center, or ORMC, nurses because they have been silenced by the hospital. On Monday, May 16th, sometime between 7 p.m. and 11 p.m., a patient on the 8th floor of the hospital used a bedside table to break a window and then jumped to his death. What is especially disturbing is that the patient loads in the Progressive Care Unit, or PCU, where the patient was located, were so high that his suicide was not discovered for hours. In the aftermath, state agents were called to investigate the incident. Nurses reported that the window that had been broken was quickly replaced, and the grass below the hospital where his body was found was burned. Every effort was made to quickly clean up the scene. Adding insult to injury, additional staffing was supplied to bring down the nurse-to-patient ratios during the inspection to portray better staffing levels. The farce was dropped once the officials left, and patient loads for the nurses skyrocketed back to their unbearable levels. Reports being sent to nurse advocates on social media are that the nurse ratios are 13-1 for the medical surgical units, or med-surg, 7 or 8-1 for the PCU units, 5-1 in the step down, and 3-1 in the ICU. The nurses that are reporting this on social media say that what's happening in hospitals should be an absolute national emergency. Okay? Another troubling patient death that occurred recently was subsequently covered up and unreported by the hospital or news media. This incident involved a patient who had departed the facility without authorization by staff, known as a patient elopement, and was subsequently hit by a car and killed. The nurses are reporting from this Orlando hospital that staffing has always been terrible, just in general, even before COVID. Then it got worse during COVID and never recovered. At times, nurses are given 4 patients in the ICU. Patients who are prone or on CRRT, continuous renal replacement therapy, or hemodialysis machines, should be 1-to-1. But COVID eliminated that. Let's say we're gonna call that the predator. We're not gonna say that C word. I slipped up and did it. YouTube don't like that. They love taking down videos that say that C word. We call it the predator here at One Brothas Mind. Okay, so going forward, that's what I'll call that. So during the predator, it eliminated the 1-to-1 staffing options. Okay. One nurse reported that I worked many shifts with 3 prone patients on CRRT machines going. PCU is going up to 6 to 8 patients, and med surg is going up to 12 to 15 patients. One of the calls that a nurse was on for staffing had one unit where 2 nurses had 18 patients each. Okay. One of the social media nurses that are reporting this, they call her Melissa, but that's a made-up name to, try to protect her identity. She noted a recent incident when the Agency for Healthcare Administration, the AHCA, came to investigate violations of a law mandating safe staffing ratios for patients on a 72-hour psychiatric hold. The hospital sticks 1 sitter for 2 patients, which is against CMS guidelines. When my manager found out, she told me to lie to the auditor and say staffing was fine. Significantly, there has been no media coverage of the incidents and subsequent reports. Nurse Nader shared an email. Nurse Nader is a TikTok personality that is reporting this story also. Actually broke the story. You can definitely find more information on this story on her page. But to continue, Nurse Nader shared an email sent to graduate nurses from ORMC announcing mass hiring of graduate nurses in the Level 1 emergency department. However, the hospital doesn't have enough experienced nurses to train them appropriately. And she is receiving text messages, saying they are giving these graduate nurses double-digit assignments. ORMC recently sent a note to employees that it will pursue Nurse Nader for trespassing should she revisit the hospital. after she dropped off food and cards to 2 nursing students. She also noted she has received threatening messages from numerous ghost accounts trying to intimidate her by referencing her child's name. Administrators just expect nurses to pick up the slack. They say things like, "Oh, we're 4 nurses. We're 4 nurses short tonight." I cannot talk. We're 4 nurses short tonight. Oh well, sucks to suck. Here's your 8 patients. Then they will write us up if our charting is 5 minutes behind. There's little doubt that the hospital giants are colluding with the state political establishment, helmed by far-right Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, to cover up the situation in the hospitals. However, the same can be said for hospitals in states run by the Democratic Party, such as in California. Nationwide, laws mandating nurses to patient ratios are broken on a daily basis, while the nurses union stand idly by, handing out endless stacks of assignment, dispute, or despite objections forms for nurses to fill out to protect their licenses while they're working illegal workloads. Also, nurses around the country have formed the Independent Nurse Rank and File Steering Committee. It's a new group the nurses have formed to try to create a group that actually supports and defends nurses and helps nurses with these situations that are going on, family. Yeah. Y'all, there's several things about this story. One, this stuff is happening nationwide, like it said in the story, at hospitals, okay? It's going around. The nursing shortage is significant, okay? Significant, all right? And basically, most black people have been doing this for a long time, but first, it's not safe to, as a patient, to be in a most of these hospitals now, it never has been really, overnight by yourself as a patient. It's not safe, okay? Because of situations like this. And to be honest, even fully staffed hospitals, it's not safe. Now, first, you say, how can you say that? You tripping. First off, let me explain. One, Katie Smooth, I've had a 28-year healthcare career. Okay, I was a biomed technician, for those that don't know. Okay, so I've been on these floors. I've been in these units. I know how they're set up. I know how they operate. Okay, so I come from a place of experience, not just hot air. All right. I've worked alongside with nurses. I've trained nurses. I've, done all that. And for those that don't know, biomed technicians, they repair and service all of the medical equipment that you see in hospitals. Okay. All right. So as a general rule, most black people, when somebody in your family goes to the hospital or is in the hospital as a patient, you do everything you can to always try to have somebody that is capable and knowledgeable, at least reasonably, as to what's going on with your family member or your friend, so that you want to have somebody there basically 24 hours a day for the most part. Even if you got 4, 5, 6 people and y'all taking turns and switching up every few hours so everybody can go back, the other person can go home. But as long as somebody is there, because all kinds of crazy stuff happens in hospitals, and it's almost always covered up. That's the reality. And then if and when crazy stuff, illegal stuff, dangerous stuff happens in hospitals, okay, and you go to try to report what's happened, they got that all set up as a hustle as well. Because when you're in the hospital, they tell you if you have any concerns or any issues, please report it to, the staff and the nurses. They even have most hospitals have a department, a small department where you can, it's a complaint department, or they call it other names, where you go file a complaint. And all you really doing is alerting the hospital to whatever problem or issue that has occurred, even significant, dangerous ones. And they're going to say, okay, we're going to look into this. And they do the same thing that the police do. Basically, they do their investigation to figure out how can we spin this to avoid any liability and avoid this getting out to the public and so on and so forth. That's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with all hospitals across the country. Okay? Now, particularly in this story, y'all heard it. Wow. So a patient, their patient-nurse ratio is so high on a lot of their units that this patient broke his window in his room with his little serving table or furniture in his room and jumped out on the 8th floor to end his life. And that's bad enough, but the patient to nurse ratio is so high on this day and in this hospital that nobody even noticed. No staff, and the first staff that's going to notice is supposed to be your nurse. But because the nurse has so many patients and she's going from patient to patient to patient to patient, if you got 8 patients while you're, working your way through each patient, the patients that you have already seen, they have to wait a significant period of time before that nurse gets to circle back around and come back and see patient number 1 again. That's why there's such a long period of time that went by and in this situation and others, when there's a high patient to nurse ratio. Okay, that's why that's illegal. That's why there's certain set laws and standards so that the nurses don't have that situation. They keep the numbers at a respectable low level so that each nurse can bounce back and forth in between their patients very quickly in very short periods of time to ensure patient safety, the patients have what they need, and they're getting the care that has been prescribed. Okay? That's what this issue is about. Okay? So, yeah. 40 nurses just walked out. I do not blame them. More power to them. And hopefully they went back. And that's a real dangerous situation because for the hospital, who's looking after the patients? That's the first question. The second question is, the hospital was already short-staffed and either was unsuccessful at finding additional nursing staff or didn't want to find additional nursing staff. And I'm going to get into that in a moment. So again, when these nurses walked out, who's taking care of those patients? Yeah. And there's, varying reports that some of the nurses ended up going back or returning because, theoretically, this is their job. Okay? This is how they make their living. So, a lot of people aren't just ready, even though they may initially walk out on a protest or what have you. a lot of people still got to go right back to that job to keep working, to keep making a living. Okay, so I don't blame them for doing that, for those that did that as well. But be clear, I don't know what officially it's called today, but like the article mentioned, nurses can sign documents where they, recuse themselves during these types of situations of having their nursing license being in jeopardy if something were to happen due to them being overscheduled, too many patients. But there's things beyond that nurses can do, and most nurses know that. And if you're a nurse, please drop in the comments what your facility calls these documents. But literally, when nurses come to work, when they first report and they get the information, if this is the type of situation, if they're not content with the staffing ratio or something else significant that is basically a violation or against the law that's happening, they can literally refuse to accept that assignment without losing their nursing license. They can say, no, I'm not working under this condition. It's too risky. The risk is too high. The danger and the legal ramifications are too high. You're risking my nursing license. So I'm not accepting this assignment. And they can leave, go home. Now, most hospitals and places for nurses that do this types of things, they start immediately threatening them. We're going to fire you. We're going to do this. They can't do that. But, it's real scary to have to try to go through that because of a jacked up hospital with jacked up patient ratio numbers. Okay. And you see, as the article reported, they force the nurses to sign non-disclosures. They do that also in hospitals. When stuff happens, like I said, they do everything to cover this stuff up. This is not new, family. This types of stuff has been happening. It's been happening all through the Predator and, like the article mentioned, before the Predator. Okay? But here's what we're going to do, family. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to share with you a video clip here of this nurse Nada. Actually, one of her videos. Actually, I'm gonna share two of them with you. They're really short, just so you can get it from the horse's mouth, kind of more firsthand. Okay, so I'm gonna do that here in just a moment. Here, all right. Let's get this going, and here we go.
Nurses from Orlando Regional Medical Center have been pouring into my Instagram, sharing their stories and asking me to continue covering it. And one of them sent me this. So for those of you saying that this didn't happen, apparently this is the window from the event. This is not the first time something like this has happened. Just about every nurse that I've talked to is very consistent in their story that management has deliberately short-staffed the nurses. They're not providing enough nurses, and it is resulting in multiple patient deaths. Not only this patient who jumped through the window and it was a delayed discovery, they don't even know when it happened, but a patient who set themselves on fire, a patient who eloped and got hit by a car, patients who are being transferred to other units without proper supervision and arriving to units dead on arrival. And yes, multiple people reporting that nurses did walk out. They're sick of it. Thankfully, the news sounds like they're going to be reporting on this soon.
Okay, family. Yeah, that's one of them. This is the nurse Nader and her TikTok page. She broke this story. And in fact, according to reports, Nurse Nader, the person you see on your screen, this lady actually is a nurse that used to work at this exact same hospital previously. Okay, she's no longer employed there. And she says in some of her other videos, with her not working as a nurse or as a nurse at this hospital, one of the two. I think she's not working as a nurse anymore or currently, is why she can report on these stories and not be in jeopardy of losing her job or something of that nature. But I'm going to share one more of her videos with you, family. We got one more. And we're going to come back and chop it up after that, okay?
There, and we've been talking on Instagram. Please check your messages. Anyways, the Orlando Sentinel, which is the primary paper for the Orlando and Central Florida area, is now covering the story. Not only are they covering the patient who jumped out of the window, but they are discussing the short staffing that is leading to these events of patient harm and death. It includes interviews from nurses who have worked at Orlando Health, including our friend Marielle, who provided a report sheet showing that she was responsible for the care of 10 patients, more than she's ever taken before. It also includes statements from a current Orlando Health employee who says on her last shift she cried. Of course, the hospital didn't say anything about their staffing ratio. Also, being that I'm a former Orlando Health employee, I gave an interview as well, explaining that this type of shit is why I put in my resignation in the first place. Here's where it gets really interesting, because the police officer, Sharp, spoke to risk management on that night. Risk management said that the nurse was in the patient's room at 10:03. That would be within an hour of the patient jumping. Risk management says that the nurse was afraid of giving an interview. Pop says that when risk management said that the nurse was afraid she'd be put in handcuffs during the interview, she told her that's ridiculous. These are just general questions about the incident. Risk management asked for somebody to be present with the nurse for emotional support, then requested to provide written statements. Officer Sharp said this was unacceptable, and she wrote that she didn't hear back from him for weeks until she received a voicemail from him asking if the investigation was over and for a copy of the report. She said she was under the impression that he would call and let her know when they could move forward with the interviews. Listen to this. In response to questions about the night of the patient's death, including why Orlando Health's risk management director was communicating on behalf of the nurses and why he didn't facilitate the interviews, Lewis, the Orlando Health spokesperson, provided a statement saying the hospital has expressed its condolences to the patient's family and provided grief counseling to impacted team members. By the way, the patient's name is misspelled in this article, and that's probably because it was misspelled on the police report but corrected later. The reporter is aware, it'll be fixed. But the full article is available in my link tree, which you can find in my bio. Got a little tea on Orlando Regional Medical Center. By the way, if you work there and we've been talking on Instagram, please.
Okay, family. There you have it. That's Nurse Nader reporting on this story. Yeah. So there's a whole lot going on. This is typical of not just this hospital, but pretty much most hospitals and how they operate. They always have operated this way. Okay. So again, it's pretty much never been safe to be a patient in a hospital, even when they're fully staffed. Because, you know, nurses are human. Sometimes they do make errors, and that's only human. But it helps. If you have a family member or a close friend that's in the hospital, go see them, check up on them. You know, and before you leave, ask them multiple times, you know, is somebody here or staying with you? Somebody, you know, all day long or throughout the day and the night or whatever, you know, try to confirm that somebody is with them, even if it's multiple different people, whatever. Because a person being with you in the hospital, you know, somebody that's reasonably competent can help, you know, ask when the nurses and doctors come in to do different things. You can ask, oh, okay, what's about to happen now? What are you guys about to do? Okay. And that person also, you know, can be fully up to speed on the, you know, the patient, the family members, you know, what's going on with their health. And the doctor's orders, they can know everything. So if, for example, if the patient and a patient's friend, they, you know, the patient has updated their friend and says the doctor's prescribed me this medicine or that med or to do this or that. When the nurses come in and to give medicine to the patient, the family friend or family member can say, okay, what we about to do now, or whatever. And, you know, after confirming that, you know, it's okay to discuss the patient's health, you know, records and information, the nurse will say, okay, we're about to give them their meds for the evening. You go, well, what med is that? And you can then confirm. The nurse will tell you the name of the medicine. And if there's a conflict, if it's supposed to be medicine A and the nurse says a completely different name, you go, wait a minute. But I thought, you sure that's the same medicine? Because they was on prescribed something different. You see what I'm saying? You can be an extra buffer, an extra safety net to double check on what is being done and what's happening to your friend or your family member as a patient. And you can also be a conduit, to help the family out as well when you're there on watch, so to speak. If some extra stuff start going on, you can immediately call the family and say, okay, they're talking about they're going to do this, that, and the third. Is this what's supposed to be happening? Or, y'all want to get down here, see what's going on? You can be a information source to help, because stuff happens in hospitals all the time and they always cover it up. Now, here's an additional point I want to make in regards to the legal aspects of things that happen in the hospital. Negligent stuff, like I said, happens all the time. Okay? Where the hospitals are negligent. Okay? And you would think, in theory, they can be sued, right? But in many states, and you need to check on yours for this, but in many states, they got the law set up to where you cannot sue a hospital if no permanent damage was done to the patient. I repeat, they have the law set up to where you cannot sue a hospital or pursue the issue legally that happened. You were damaged. You were hurt in some way. But if the damage is not permanent, you can't sue the hospital. And a big part of that comes on those documents they make you sign. When you sign into the hospital, you're signing, agreeing to this thing. They don't tell you this stuff when you sign in those documents, but that, as well as a lot of other stuff, is on those documents. You're basically signing away your rights to seek legal remedy when they jack you up. Trust me, I've had, even not just working in the healthcare field for 28 years, I've had several run-ins and issues at hospitals, from negligent damage. One hospital almost killed my daughter when she was born, and I couldn't sue. Legally. And I'll go even beyond that. What a lot of y'all may not know is, even if you got a case or something that has happened that, let's say you're not sure if you could sue, something jacked up has happened, they done damaged you or your family member as a patient in some way or another, and you're trying to find out. Most attorneys in your city, most of them won't even do a consultation with you when you explain to them that you're looking for a consultation about potential lawsuit against Hospital X for damages. Most of them won't even hear or do a consultation with you. Then the ones that will, most of them, now they're supposed to reveal to you that they have a conflict of interest because they've done work in the past or expect to do or currently or something. They have some kind of connection with that hospital. They're supposed to reveal that to you and not participate or not help you with your legal pursuit. But a lot of them will go ahead and hear your complaint and then on the DL turn around and go right back to that hospital and tell them everything you just reported. It's a dirty game they playing, y'all. And then when you get down to the very, very one or two attorneys in your city that actually are willing to file lawsuits against hospitals for negligence and damages done, like I said, the bar is so high as far as it has to be a lifetime damage in most states, or you can't sue. And guess who determines whether it's lifetime damage that was done? Other doctors that work for, guess who? Probably the same hospital or many others. It's a club. They all working together against you. So, man, this stuff goes, the craziness goes to it. Many of y'all have had your own personal negligent experiences with hospitals and whatnot. And y'all in so many words have experienced a lot of the things I've just mentioned. It's been a scam as far as being responsible and accountable. But let you do something, let you make a mistake, let a nurse make a mistake, you going to jail. A nurse will lose her license and possibly go to jail. You're held accountable. But that's how, once again, family, the corporations, the big entities, they have all the rights of a human being, but no responsibilities. And the few that they have, they manipulated the laws in each state to make it extremely hard to prove that they're responsible and then hold them legally responsible. So yeah, family, this story is it's crazy. I think there was one other thing I wanted to. Yeah, they're going after this nurse Nada. That doesn't surprise me. That's typical. But keep in mind, family, this patient jumped to their death from the 8th floor, and it was hours before anyone even noticed. Their ratios are so high, the nurse to patient ratios. And then, like they always do, as soon as the investigators and people like that come in, the hospitals break their neck to try to look right. And then as soon as the regulators and the investigators leave, everything goes back to the way it was. That's typical. That's every hospital across the country. Okay? Yeah. So, man, there was a couple other points I wanted to share with you guys. Let's see here. Elopements happen all the time, even when they're fully staffed. Oh, there was the other point. A lot of hospitals, especially right now and during the Predator, okay, I did a report, and I'm going to post it at the end of this video so you can click on it and check on it. There was another issue or another report I did about some hospital staff and nurses specifically that, during the Predator, the whole travel nurse game and pay skyrocketed. A big part of why that happened was when the Predator hit New York real hard first. New York was, they needed help. They needed all the nurses they could possibly get. So to motivate the nurses to come help them and work there in New York, they started significantly increasing the travel nurse pay. Okay. And there's reports it got up to 60, 70. I've even heard a few reports of nurses making $100 an hour or more in various places as travel nurses, right? But that ain't all. After this occurred, then what you have to understand is that changed the travel nurse pay market for all travel nurses across the country, right? So regular nurses that, like say here in Indiana, where Katie Smooth is, regular nurses making 30, 35 an hour. They're looking at the travel nurse pay and it's 60 or more an hour. And they're like, wait a minute. Yeah. So a whole lot of regular full-time nurses put their 2 weeks notice in and immediately started working for the travel nurse agencies because they're making 2 times plus their salaries. That's a no-brainer for the ones that could make it work to work out the logistics, right? It got so bad, family, that the United States government started looking into, and there was politicians on both sides of the aisle that were trying to create bills and new laws to try to regulate and put caps on the pay for travel nurses. You're like, what? Yes, they've been doing it. They're still working on that, by the way. They just hasn't been any that I've seen, hasn't been too many recent reports on it, but they're still working on it. So ultimately, family, what I'm telling you, you have to understand is when the market works in your favor as an employee, okay? When it really works in your favor for some reason, they do everything they can to shut it down. But when it works in their favor, to give them more profits, to build their companies and corporations, that's what we got to keep that going. Y'all see how that works? It's kind of similar. I mean, and this is completely unrelated, but it's the same type of situation. If y'all remember that the GameStop stock buy situation that happened during the Predator, where a whole bunch of people online forums, they made a decision because the GameStop stock had dropped to such a low price. A whole bunch of people online and social media or whatnot, they made a decision. They said everybody on, say, Tuesday, everybody's going to buy GameStop stock. And we're going to drive the price of the stock back up as high as we can so we all can make some money. Why? Because that's what the controllers of the stock market do, right? So some of y'all remember this story. So that's what happened. They drove GameStop, the price of the stock up crazy high. They made a bunch of people make a gang of money, right? But once it got to a certain point, it was so high, the people who were really controlling the stock market, because it's always been a hustle, it's controlled gambling, y'all. It's never been free functioning. Okay? They plan everything that happened. All right. Those people, they called some of the apps that were selling GameStop stock and forced them to stop selling the stock. So don't let nobody else buy the stock. Don't let nobody sell stock. Don't let nobody do nothing. Shut it down. And all the regular people are sitting there go, wait, y'all cheating. Y'all can't do this. Yes, they can. They do it all the time. It's basically people figured out how to do, in that example, the same thing that the real cheaters and criminals have been doing for centuries with the stock market. Okay? And another reason why they shut it down was because the real controllers and cheaters of the stock market and the insider trading stuff, they, most of them, or many of them, let's say that, they had bought what's called a put stock. That's a stock that bets on a company's value or their stock value decreasing. Okay, so you can buy those too. And remember, GameStop, it's a tongue twister. GameStop stock prior to all these people buying it was dropping, and it's just going on. It was actually headed. There was talks of it going out of business, right? So a lot of the controller cheaters, right, of the stock market, they were buying it. So yeah, it's gonna keep dropping, and eventually we're gonna make some money while it goes out of business. But when all the people from the online forums started buying it and drove the price up, the people that were buying it were making money, but the controlling cheaters, criminals, they were actually losing millions because the stock was doing the opposite of what the put stocks they had purchased were supposed to do. Y'all get that? Hopefully I did an okay job explaining that. But yeah, anytime and every time when the market in some way starts to really benefit the people, watch out. And in this case, the travel nurse market started to really benefit travel nurses, and it jacked up. They've been working on trying to stop that because you got to keep in mind, say, like I said, you got hospitals, they pay their nurses, say $35 an hour. The travel nurses are making over $60 an hour. A bunch of the hospital nurses quit and go work for the travel nurse agencies to make more money. You have a right to do that, right? They put their 2 weeks in and they leave. Now that hospital and most hospitals around the country, they have this exact situation that we're reporting on here tonight. Right? It creates this exact short staff, high nurse ratio situation. Okay? So the hospitals, in regards to the care for and safety of the patients, are now the patients are in danger if they don't have enough staff, which is the whole point of this story. Right? So the hospitals are scrambling around trying to call agencies and find where they can try to hire nurses, and most of the nurses that are available, like I said, they're working for the agencies now. They can hire them, but now the hospitals have to pay the new high agency pay rate, the $60 an hour plus. Okay? Family. A lot of hospitals made the decision to not pay that. They're like, that's too much. We don't want to pay that much, or we can't afford to pay that much. Whatever excuse they want to give. So they have continued to just keep functioning with unsafe nurse-patient ratio numbers. And all of their patients are in danger. Yeah, that's what's happening right now. And as you see, this ain't just in this hospital in Orlando, family. This is nationwide. And the nurses, they're communicating a lot. There's a bunch of different nursing groups and social media groups and stuff. They're communicating. They're finding out which hospitals are the safest and best places to work at and which ones are not. Which ones treat the nurses like trash and whatnot. And nurses, when they get that information, man, they use it to their benefit. They move around where they need to move. And so the hospitals that are treating nurses like trash, like this hospital, they may never be able to get back to a full staff for nursing. And it's because of how they treat their nurses and how they run the hospital. It's not safe, and they treat them like trash. Okay? So, hopefully, y'all, this story finally gets some traction. I humbly hope I'm doing my part to help get this out. To try to help the public to know and expose the mainstream media, the local media there in Orlando, the national media, the hospital, the investigator, all of them are in on it. The politicians, they're all in on these type of cover-ups. Again, family, this stuff is happening every day. Don't leave your family member or your family friend or your friend in the hospital alone. Okay? They are in danger. Now, I will say this. There are some absolutely amazing, wonderful, just stupendous nurses. I ain't never said that word, stupendous. Out there. They're doing a hell of a job. They're doing above and beyond, whether they're in a short staff situation or a full staff situation. For those nurses, for y'all that are real nurses, that are really taking care of your patients, thank you. We all say thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay? We love y'all. All right? So that's it, family. Y'all let me know what y'all think on this story, about this story. Hopefully it gets some more traction and it goes viral more on these internet streets. And then if it does, eventually y'all start seeing it on some mainstream media outlets and stuff like that. So, but it's going to, trust me, they're going to change a lot of the information. or it'll be like a lot of mainstream media reports. When they report on something, a problem with a government official or government or a corporate entity or something like that, the report is like a 30-second report. Or on the police, this happened, we'll get you more information later. And it's gone. That's how they hide it. They can say, we reported on it. You didn't report nothing on purpose. But when it's you or your cousin, done did something out here in these streets or somewhere, oh, it's a long story. Oh, God. Why did that happen? Why could they have done? How could they have done such a thing? Y'all see this stuff going on. It's crazy. But again, family, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Because here at One Brothas Mind, we're trying to bring you the information and facts you need. Even stories and reports that are not reported everywhere else. There's a lot going on. A lot going on. You cannot depend on mainstream media as your only information source. If you do, God help you. Okay? Again, let me know. Let's chop it up in the comments about what y'all think about this story. Hopefully more information comes out and the cover-up gets exposed completely. I'm all for that. So, that's it. And this concludes this broadcast for One Brothas Mind. We thank you for joining us. And as a part of the new Black media, B1 choices are mandatory and being on code is required. But never fear, Yeshua the Christ is with you always. Shalom.